Okay. There's Amrita and Lavanya. So. And we're reading the gospel down in the convent Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're in about the same place. So it's a little confusing for me. I believe we're on chapter 44, the Master on Himself and His Experiences, on page 827. I definitely remember reading or hearing all of this on the previous page. So, we'll start there on page 827. August 9th, 1885. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room at Dakshineshwar. Rakal, M., Dvija, and his father and other devotees were present. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. After returning from Vrindavan, Rakal had spent a few days at home. Now he was staying with the master. Latu, Harish, and Ramlal were also staying at the temple garden. Sri Ramakrishna was not well. It was the beginning of the illness subsequently diagnosed as the fatal cancer. But this did not disturb the serenity of his mind. Day and night he had only one thought, and that was the spiritual welfare of his disciples. He was guiding them toward the attainment of God. He encouraged them constantly to cultivate knowledge and devotion, and warned them of the snares of lust and greed. He was completely indifferent to his own illness and devoted himself wholeheartedly to the fulfillment of his earthly mission. Dvija was about 16 years old. After the death of his mother, his father had married a second time. Dvija often accompanied him to Dakshineshwar, but his father did not approve of it. Dvija's father had for a long time been speaking of visiting Sri Ramakrishna. Today, he had come to Dakshineshwar. He was the manager of a business firm in Calcutta and had passed his examination in law. Master to Dvija's father, please don't mind your children's coming here. I ask people to live in the world after the awakening of their spiritual consciousness. After extracting gold through hard labor, a man may keep it under earth or in a box or underwater. The gold is not affected. I ask people to live in the world in a spirit of detachment. If you break the jackfruit after rubbing oil on your hands, its sticky juice will not smear them. If the unripe mind dwells in the world, the mind gets soiled. One must first attain knowledge and then live in the world. If you put milk in water, the milk is spoiled. But this will not happen if butter churned from the milk is put in water. Dvija's father, that is true, sir. Master, smiling, I know why you scold your children. You only threaten them. The brahmachari said to the snake, you are a fool indeed. I forbade you to bite, but not to hiss. Your enemies would not have beaten you if only you had hissed at them. Your scolding of the children is really a hissing. Dvija's father smiles. A good son is an indication of his father's spiritual nature. If good water comes out of when a reservoir is dug, it only indicates the virtue of the owner. A son is called Atmaja, the self-reborn. There is no difference between you and your son. In one way, you yourself are reborn as your son. In one sense, you are a worldly person, working in a business office and enjoying worldly life. In another sense, you are a devotee of God in the form of your son. I heard that you were a very worldly person, but now I find it isn't so. Smiling, you know all this. I understand that you are very circumspect. Perhaps that is why you are nodding your assent to what I'm saying. Dvija's father smiles. If your children visit this place, they will be able to know what you really are, how precious one's father is. If a person deceives his father and mother in order to seek religion, he gets only worthless trash. A man is born with several debts to his father, the Devas, and the Rishis. Besides, there is his debt to his mother. He also has a debt to his wife. She must be supported. If the wife is chaste, the husband must provide for her after his death. I could not live at Vrindavan on account of my mother. When I remembered that my mother was living in the temple garden here at Dakshineshwar, I could not feel peaceful in Vrindavan. I ask people to live in the world and at the same time fix their minds on God. I don't ask them to give up the world. I say, fulfill your worldly duties and also think of God. Dvija's father, I tell my children that they should attend to their studies. I don't forbid them to come to you, but I don't want them to waste time in frivolities with the youngsters. Master, referring to Dvija, this boy must have been born with some good tendencies. Why are the two other brothers different from him? Why is he alone spiritually minded? Will you be able to compel him not to visit this place? Sooner or later, everyone unfolds his inborn tendencies. Dvija's father, yes, that is true. Sri Ramakrishna came down from the couch and sat on the floor beside Dvija's father. While talking with him, he touched him now and then. It was nearly evening. Sri Ramakrishna asked M and the others to show Dvija's father the temples. He said to them, I should have accompanied him myself if I were well. He asked someone to give sweets to the young men and said to Dvija's father, let the children have a little refreshment. It is customary. Dvija's father visited the temples and the images and took a stroll in the garden. Sri Ramakrishna engaged happily in conversation with Bhupen, Dvija, and M, and others on the southeast porch of his room. He playfully slapped Bhupen and M on the back. He said to Dvija with a laugh, how I talk to your father. Dvija's father returned to Sri Ramakrishna's room after dusk. He intended to leave shortly. He was feeling hot. Sri Ramakrishna fanned him himself. In a few minutes, the father took leave of the master. Sri Ramakrishna stood up to bid him farewell. It was 8 o'clock. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Mahima Charan, Rakal, M, and one or two companions of Mahima Charan were in the room. Mahima Charan was going to spend the night at the temple garden. Master to Mahima, well, how do you find Kedar? Has he only seen milk or has he drunk it too? Mahima, yes, he is enjoying bliss. Master, Nitya Gopal? Mahima, very good. He is in a lofty state of mind. Master, yes. Well, what about Girish Ghosh? Mahima, he too has developed nicely, but he belongs to another class. Master, and Narendra? Mahima, he is now in the state I was in 15 years ago. Master, the younger Naren? How guileless he is. Mahima, yes, quite guileless. Master, you are right. I'm reflecting a little. Let me see who else. It will be sufficient for the youngsters who come here if they know only two things. If they know these, they will not have to practice much discipline and austerity. First, who I am, and second, who they are. Many of the youngsters belong to the inner circle. Two very easy things to know. Who is Ramakrishna and who are you? Those belonging to the inner circle will not attain liberation. I shall have to assume a body again in a northwesterly direction. I feel peace of mind when I see the youngsters. How can I feel joy at the sight of those who have begotten children and are engaged in lawsuits and are involved in lust and greed? How could I live without seeing pure-souled persons? Mahimacharan recited some texts from the scriptures. He also described various mystic rites of the Tantra. Master, well, some say that my soul, going into samadhi, flies about like a bird in the Mahakasha, the infinite space. Once a sadhu of Rishikesh came here. He said to me, there are 5 kinds of samadhi. I find that you have experienced them all. In these samadhis, one feels the sensation of the spiritual current to be like the movement of an ant, a fish, a monkey, a bird, or a serpent. Sometimes the spiritual current rises through the spine, crawling like an ant. Sometimes in samadhi, the soul swims joyfully in the ocean of divine ecstasy like a fish. Sometimes when I lie down on my side, I feel the spiritual current pushing me like a monkey and playing with me joyfully. I remain still. That current, like a monkey, suddenly with one jump reaches the Sahasrara. That is why you see me jump up with a start. Sometimes again, the spiritual current rises like a bird hopping from one branch to another. The place where it rests feels like fire. It may hop from Muladhara to Swadhisthana, from Swadhisthana to the heart, and thus gradually to the head. Sometimes the spiritual current moves up like a snake, going in a zigzag way. At last it reaches the head, and I go into samadhi. A man's spiritual consciousness is not awakened unless his kundalini is aroused. The kundalini dwells in the Muladhara. When it is aroused, it passes along the Sushumna nerve, goes through the centers of Svadhisthana, Manipur, and so on, and at last reaches the head. This is called the movement of the Mahavayu, the spiritual current. It culminates in samadhi. One's spiritual consciousness is not awakened by the mere reading of books. One should also pray to God. The kundalini is aroused if the aspirant feels restlessness for God. To talk of knowledge from mere study and hearsay, what will that accomplish? Just before my attaining this state of mind, it had been revealed to me how the kundalini is aroused, how the lotuses of the different centers blossom, how the lotuses of the different centers blossom forth, and how all this culminates in samadhi. This is a very secret experience. I saw a boy 22 or 23 years old, exactly resembling me, enter the Sushumna nerve and commune with the lotuses, touching them with his tongue. He began with the center at the anus and passed through the centers at the sexual organ, navel, and so on. The different lotuses of those centers, 4-petaled, 6-petaled, 10-petaled, and so forth, had been drooping. At his touch, they stood erect. When he reached the heart, I distinctly remember it, and communed with the lotus there, touching it with his tongue. The 12-petaled lotus, which was hanging head down, stood erect and opened its petals. Then he came to the 16-petaled lotus in the throat, and the 2-petaled lotus in the forehead, and last of all, the 1,000-petaled lotus in the head blossomed. Since then, I have been in this state. Sri Ramakrishna came down to the floor and sat near Mahimacharan. And a few other devotees were near him. Rakal also was in the room. Master, to Mahima, for a long time I have wanted to tell you my spiritual experiences, but I could not. I feel like telling you today. You say that by mere sadhana one can attain a state of mind like mine, but it is not so. There is something special here, referring to himself. Rakal M and the others became eager to hear what the master was going to say. Master, God talked to me. It was not merely his vision. Yes, he talked to me. Under the banyan tree, I saw him coming from the Ganges. Then we laughed so much. By way of playing with me, he cracked my fingers. Then he talked. Yes, he talked to me. For 3 days I wept continuously, and he revealed to me what is in the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, and other scriptures. One day he showed me the Maya of Mahamaya. A small light inside a room began to grow, and at last it enveloped the whole universe. Further, he revealed to me a huge reservoir of water covered with green scum. The wind moved a little of the scum, and immediately the water became visible. But in the twinkling of an eye, scum from all sides came dancing in and again covered the water. He revealed to me that the water was like Satchidananda, and the scum like Maya. On account of Maya, Satchidananda is not seen, though now and then one may get a glimpse of it. Again, Maya covers it. God reveals the nature of the devotees to me before they arrive. I saw Chaitanya's party singing and dancing near the Panchavati between the banyan tree and the bakul tree. I noticed Balaram was there. If it weren't for him, who would there be to supply me with sugar candy and such things? Pointing to him, and I saw him too. I had seen Keshav before I actually met him. I had seen him and his party in my samadhi. In front of me sat a room full of men. Keshav looked like a peacock sitting with its tail spread out. The tail meant his followers. I saw a red gem on Keshav's head. That indicated his rajas. He said to his disciples, "Please listen to what he," meaning the master, "is saying." I said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, these people hold the views of Englishmen. Why should I talk to them?" Then the mother explained to me that it would be like this in the Kali Yuga. Keshav and his followers got from here, meaning himself, the names of Hari and the Divine Mother. That is why the Divine Mother took Vijay away from Keshav's party. But Vijay did not join the Adi Samaj. Pointing to himself, there must be something special here. Long ago, a young man named Gopal Sen used to visit me. He who dwells in me placed his foot on Gopal's chest. Gopal said in an ecstatic mood, "You will have to wait here a long time. I cannot live any more with worldly people." He took leave of me. Afterwards, I heard that he was dead. Perhaps he was born as Nitya Gopal. I have had many amazing visions. I had a vision of the indivisible Satchidananda. Inside it, I saw two groups with a fence between them. On one side were Kedar, Chuni, and other devotees who believe in the personal God. On the other side was a luminous space like a heap of red brick dust. Inside it was seated Narendra, immersed in samadhi. Seeing him absorbed in meditation, I called aloud, "O Narendra!" He opened his eyes a little. I came to realize that he had been born in another form in Simla in a Kayastha family. At once, I said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, entangle him in Maya. Otherwise, he will give up his body in samadhi." Kedar, a believer in the personal God, peeped in and ran away with the shutter. Therefore, I feel that it is the Divine Mother herself who dwells in this body and plays with the devotees. When I first had my exalted state of mind, my body would radiate light. My chest was always flushed. Then I said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, do not reveal thyself outwardly. Please go inside." That is why my complexion is so dull now. If my body were still luminous, people would have tormented me. A crowd would always have thronged here. Now there is no outer manifestation. That keeps weeds away. Only genuine devotees will remain with me now. Do you know why I have this illness? It has the same significance. Those whose devotion to me has a selfish motive behind it will run away at the sight of my illness. I cherished a desire. I said to the Mother, "O Mother, I shall be the king of the devotees." Again, this thought arose in my mind. He who sincerely prays to God will certainly come here. He must. You see, that is what's happening now. Only people of that kind come. My parents knew who dwells inside this body. Father had a dream at Gaya. In that dream, Raghavir said to him, "I shall be born as your son." God alone dwells inside this body. Such renunciation of lust and greed. Could I have accomplished that by myself? I have never enjoyed a woman even in a dream. Nukta instructed me in Vedanta. In 3 days, I went into samadhi. At the sight of my samadhi under the Madhavi vine, he was quite taken aback and exclaimed, "Ah, what is this?" Then he came to know who resides in this body. He said to me, "Please let me go." At these words of Totapuri, I went into an ecstatic mood and said, "You cannot go until I realize the truth of Vedanta." Day and night I lived with him. We talked only Vedanta. The Brahmani used to say to me, "Don't listen to Vedanta. It will injure your devotion to God." I said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, please get me a rich man. If you don't, how shall I be able to protect this body? How shall I be able to keep the sadhus and the devotees near me?" That is why Mathur Babu provided for my needs for 14 years. He who dwells in me tells me beforehand what particular class of devotees will come to me. When I have a vision of Gauranga, I know that devotees of Gauranga are coming. When I have a vision of Kali, the Shaktas come. At the time of the evening service, I used to cry out from the roof of the kuti weeping, "Oh, where are you all? Come to me. You see, they are all gathering here, one by one." God himself dwells in this body. It is he who, of his own accord, is working with these devotees. What a wonderful state of mind some of the devotees have. The younger Narayan gets kumbhaka without any effort, and samadhi too. Sometimes he stays in an ecstatic mood for 2.5 hours. sometimes even more. How wonderful. I have practiced all kinds of sadhana, jnana yoga, karma yoga, and bhakti yoga. I have even gone through the exercises of hatha yoga to increase longevity. There is another person dwelling in this body. Otherwise, after attaining samadhi, how could I live with the devotees and enjoy the love of God? Kaur Singh used to say to me, I have never before seen a person who has returned from the plane of samadhi. You are none other than Nanak. I live in the midst of worldly people. On all sides I see lust and greed. Nevertheless, this is the state of my mind, unceasing samadhi and bhava. That is the reason Pratap said at the sight of my ecstatic mood, good heavens, it is as if he were possessed by a ghost. Rakal, M, and the others were speechless as they drank in this account of Sri Ramakrishna's unique experiences. But did Mahimacharan understand the import of these words? Even after hearing them, he said to the master, these things have happened to you on account of your meritorious actions in your past births. Mahima still thought that Sri Ramakrishna was a sadhu or a devotee of God. The master nodded assent to Mahima's words and said, yes, the result of past actions. God is like an aristocrat who has many mansions. Here, referring to himself, is one of his drawing rooms. The bhakta is God's drawing room. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the small couch. It was Mahima's desire to form a brahmachakra in the presence of the master. It's a mystic circle described in Tantra. Mahima formed a circle on the floor with Rakal M, Kishori, and one or two other devotees. He asked them all to meditate. Rakal went into an ecstatic state. The master came down from the couch and placed his hand on Rakal's chest, repeating the name of the Divine Mother. Rakal regained consciousness of the outer world. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, the 14th day of the dark fortnight of the moon. There was intense darkness everywhere. One or two of the devotees were pacing the concrete embankment of the Ganges. Sri Ramakrishna was up. He came out and said to the devotees, Nankta told me that at this time, about midnight, one hears the anahata sound. In the early hours of the morning, Mahimacharan and M lay down on the floor in the master's room. Rakal slept on a camp cot. Now and then Sri Ramakrishna paced up and down the room with his clothes off like a 5-year-old child. And that's the end of that day. Are there any questions or comments? None? Okay, but I think we'll stop there. We're going on to, well, we can read the 10th. It's a very short day. Monday, August 10th. It was dawn. The master was chanting the name of the Divine Mother. He went to the porch west of his room and looked at the Ganges. Then he stopped in front of the pictures of different gods and goddesses in the room and bowed to them. The devotees left their beds, saluted Sri Ramakrishna, and went out. The master was talking to a devotee in the Panchavati. The latter had dreamt of Chaitanya Deva. Master in an ecstatic mood. Ah me, ah me. Devotee. But sir, it was only a dream. Master, is a dream a small thing? The master's voice was choked. His eyes were filled with tears. Sri Ramakrishna was told of a devotee who had divine visions even while he was awake. The master said, I am not surprised. Narendra too sees forms of God nowadays. Mahimacharan went to one of the Shiva temples to the west of the courtyard and chanted hymns from the Vedas. He was alone. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. M bathed in the Ganges and came to Sri Ramakrishna. The Brahmani, who was grief-stricken on account of her daughter's death, also entered the room. The master asked the Brahmani to give M some prasad to eat. Brahmani, please eat something yourself first, then he will eat. Master to M, take some prasad of Jagannath first and then eat. After eating the prasad, M went to the Shiva temples and saluted the deity. Then he returned to the master's room and saluted him. He was ready to go to Calcutta. Master, tenderly, go home safely. You have to attend to your duties. Okay, and that's the end of that day. M left. So we have no more on that day. No comments, no.
There is one. It looks like there is one.
Oh, there is one, okay.
Wasn't there?
I didn't see one. Comments or questions? Oh, Lavanya.
What page did you start on? I want to reread that. That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. We can reread the gospel 1,000 times, and every time it's wonderful.
I just want to reread that, what you did tonight. What page, do you remember what page you started on?
Oh, sure. It's, I just finished reading
The last page is fine. Either one, first or last.
832, 833, and we ended on 834.
Thank you.
Okay.
Krishna Prana, could I ask a question? When Thakur said that God spoke to him, do you believe he was referring to the Divine Mother? He didn't say. He normally says who speaks to him, but in that instance, in the beginning of the chapter or middle of the chapter, he didn't really say. He said God, just in the whatever.
Yeah. That's what he said. Maybe it was God.
Yeah, well, what the question is, I guess. Anyway, okay.
In Bengali, he used the word Ishwar. So God spoke to him, perhaps in many forms, but he was not aware of the form. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway.
Sometimes those things are
The Divine Mother, so.
As they keep saying, the things in samadhi are indescribable in human language. So that's probably as close as he could get. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, it's good to see you all. Take care. And those of you that have a happy Mother's Day, and everyone have a happy Mother's Day. We'll have the reading of the Eternal Companion on Wednesday, and the gospel reading next Saturday, and the next Sunday I'll be giving a lecture on celebrating Mother. So please come. They're all Zoom, they're all YouTube. Okay. And I will announce one more time, we're still planning on opening the first weekend in June. So we'll see what the Lord wills. We'll end with a chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanama.